had never been the kind of girl who turned heads. Not at the grocery store, not at work, not even at my own college graduation, where everyone's parents pretended to be impressed. I was the friend who blended into wallpaper at parties, the daughter who always wore cardigans to family dinners, the woman who ordered the same coffee every morning because experimenting felt too bold. So when my best friend Lila dragged me into that boutique on Fifth Avenue and shoved a dress into my arms, a dress that barely qualified as fabric, all silk and shadow and crimson defiance, I laughed. "I can't wear this," I told her. "You're wearing it to my engagement party, or I'm uninviting you," she shot back. That was how I ended up standing in front of a mirror in her penthouse bathroom 3 nights later, barely recognizing myself. The dress clung to me like a whispered secret, the neckline dipping low enough to make me hold my breath, the slit riding high enough that I kept tugging it down every few seconds. "Stop fidgeting," Lila called from the hallway. "You look incredible." I didn't feel incredible. I felt exposed, but I loved her. And she was getting married to a man who clearly adored her. So I swallowed my nerves and walked out into the party. The penthouse was filled with people I didn't know. Lila's fiancé, Marco, came from money, the kind of money that didn't need to announce itself. Everything about the space screamed quiet power. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, champagne that probably cost more than my rent. I stayed near the edges, clutching a glass I wasn't drinking from, smiling politely at strangers who didn't bother learning my name. That was when I saw him. He stood near the windows, surrounded by men in dark suits, but somehow apart from them. Tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair that fell just slightly too long, and a jawline that could have been carved from stone. He wore his suit like armor, and when he laughed at something one of the men said, it didn't reach his eyes. I looked away quickly. I didn't belong in his line of sight, but then I needed air. The room felt too hot, too crowded, and my dress felt like it was shrinking around me. I slipped through the crowd toward the hallway that led to the balcony, keeping my head down, trying to be invisible again. I passed him without meaning to, just a few feet away, close enough that I caught the scent of expensive cologne and something darker smoke, maybe, or whiskey. I kept walking. "Stop." The voice was low, smooth, and entirely too calm. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs as I slowly turned around. He was looking directly at me now. His eyes dark, unreadable, dangerous, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. "Come here," he said. It wasn't a request. I glanced around, hoping he was talking to someone else. But the hallway was empty. The noise of the party felt miles away. I was just going to get some air," I stammered. He tilted his head slightly, studying me the way someone might study a puzzle they hadn't decided whether to solve or destroy. Then he smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "If you walk past me in that dress again," he let the words hang in the air, his voice dropping to something that felt like a warning wrapped in velvet. "You won't make it to the balcony." I blinked. My brain scrambled to process what he'd just said. He was joking. He had to be joking. I forced a nervous laugh and tugged at the hem of my dress. I'll keep that in mind." His smile widened, but his eyes didn't change. I turned and walked as quickly as I could without running, my pulse hammering in my ears, my hands shaking so badly I had to press them against the cool glass of the balcony door when I finally reached it. I stood outside for a long time, letting the night air calm my racing heart. He was joking. Obviously, men like that didn't notice girls like me. When I finally went back inside, I avoided that hallway entirely. I found Lila near the bar, laughing with a group of women I didn't recognize, and I stayed glued to her side for the rest of the night. But I felt him watching me. Every time I glanced toward the windows, he was there, still surrounded by those men, still untouchable. But his gaze found mine across the room more than once, and each time, I looked away first. By the time the party wound down, I was exhausted from the tension coiled in my chest. "Stay over," Leela insisted as guests started to leave. "It's late." I almost said yes. But I needed to be in my own space, away from this world that didn't feel like mine. "I'll grab a cab," I told her. "I'll text you when I'm home." Marco appeared beside her, sliding an arm around her waist. "I'll have someone drive you," he said easily. "Oh, that's okay. It's not a request, Ella," he said with a grin, but there was something firm underneath it. "It's late. Humor me." I didn't argue. 10 minutes later, I was standing outside the building, waiting for the car Marco had arranged. My arms wrapped around myself against the October chill. A black car pulled up. Sleek, expensive, tinted windows. The driver got out and opened the back door without a word. I hesitated for half a second, then slid inside. The door closed behind me, and that was when I realized I wasn't alone. He sat in the opposite seat, one arm draped casually across the back of the leather, his eyes fixed on me with that same unsettling calm. My breath caught. What are you doing here?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away, just watched me, studied me. Then he leaned forward slightly, and the space between us felt like it vanished. "I warned you," he said softly. My mouth went dry. I don't understand. You walked past me again." I had. On my way out, I'd been so focused on getting to the elevator that I hadn't even noticed him near the door. "I didn't mean—" "I know." His voice was calm. Too calm. The car started moving. I gripped the edge of the seat. "Where are we going?" He sat back again, his expression unreadable. "Somewhere you'll be safe." "I don't need—" "Yes," he interrupted, his tone sharpening just enough to make me stop breathing. "You do." I stared at him, my mind racing, my body frozen. "Who are you?" I finally managed. He smiled again. That same dangerous smile. Dante Moretti. The name didn't mean anything to me, but the way he said it like it should made my blood run cold. The car didn't take me home. I knew that within the first 5 minutes, when we turned away from my neighborhood and onto a highway I'd never taken. I sat rigid in my seat, my hands clenched in my lap, every instinct screaming at me to do something, demand to be let out, call someone, scream, but I couldn't move. Dante Moretti sat across from me like a king on a throne, silent and unbothered, scrolling through his phone as if he hadn't just kidnapped me. "Where are we going?" I asked again, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't look up. "I told you, somewhere safe." "Safe from what?" "From people who would use you to hurt me." I blinked. "I don't even know you." "You don't need to." His calm was infuriating, terrifying. "Please," I said, hating the tremor in my voice. Just take me home. I won't say anything. I won't." "Ella." The way he said my name made me stop mid-sentence. He finally looked up from his phone, his dark eyes locking onto mine. "Do you know who Marco Santini is?" I frowned. "He's Leela's fiancé. He's also the son of the most powerful arms dealer on the East Coast," Dante said evenly. "And tonight, at that party, you were photographed standing next to him, smiling, laughing, close enough that certain people might assume you matter to him." My stomach dropped. "That's insane. I'm just Leela's friend. I'm nobody." "To them," Dante said, leaning forward slightly, "nobody is exactly the kind of person they take." I shook my head, trying to process his words. "Then why are you taking me?" His jaw tightened. "Because if they take you, they'll do worse than kill you. And Marco will start a war over it. A war I don't need right now. So this is about Marco." "No." The word came out hard. "Final." I stared at him, my pulse racing. "Then what is it about?" He didn't answer. The house, if it could even be called that, was massive, set back from the road, hidden behind iron gates and tall hedges. It looked like something out of a crime movie. All stone and dark windows and cold, architectural beauty. The car stopped in front of the entrance, and Dante got out without a word. The driver opened my door, and I hesitated before stepping out onto the gravel driveway. Dante was already halfway to the front door. "Are you coming, or do you plan to sleep in the car?" He called over his shoulder. I followed, because what else could I do? Inside, the house was just as imposing as the exterior. High ceilings, dark wood, art that probably cost more than my entire life. It smelled like leather and cedar and something faintly metallic that made my skin prickle. A woman appeared from a side hallway, older, stern-faced, dressed in black. "Mr. Moretti." She greeted him with a nod. "Prepare the East Wing guest room," Dante said without stopping, "and make sure she has everything she needs." The woman's eyes flicked to me briefly, her expression unreadable, before she nodded and disappeared. Dante led me up a wide staircase, down a long hallway lined with closed doors, and finally stopped in front of one near the end. He pushed it open. The room beyond was beautiful. A large bed with crisp white linens, a sitting area near tall windows, an adjoining bathroom visible through another doorway. It looked like a luxury hotel suite. It looked like a cage. "You'll stay here," Dante said. I turned to face him, my fear finally boiling over into anger. "For how long?" "Until it's safe." "And when will that be?" "When I say so." I crossed my arms, trying to stop my hands from shaking. "You can't just keep me here." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. And suddenly the space felt much smaller. "I can," he said quietly. "And I will. This is kidnapping. This is protection. I didn't ask for your protection." My voice broke on the last word, and I hated myself for it. Dante studied me for a long moment, his expression softening just slightly, though maybe I imagined it. "No," he said. "You didn't." He turned to leave. "Wait." He paused, his hand on the door handle. "Why do you care?" I asked. "If this is really about Marco, why didn't you just tell him? Why bring me here yourself?" Dante looked back at me, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Something I couldn't name, because I don't trust anyone else to keep you alive. And then he was gone. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the door, waiting for, I didn't know what, for him to come back, for someone to unlock the door and tell me this was all a mistake. But no one came. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me under, and I woke to pale morning light streaming through the windows. There was a tray of food on the table near the sitting area, fresh fruit, pastries, coffee, and a folded piece of paper beside it. I picked up the note. "You're not a prisoner. But you will stay, D." I crumpled it in my fist. By the third day, I'd explored every inch of the room. I'd tested the door unlocked, just as he'd said, and wandered the hallway, only to find more closed doors and silence. The house felt empty, but I knew he was here. I could feel it. On the fourth morning, I finally worked up the courage to go downstairs. The kitchen was enormous, all marble and stainless steel, and Dante sat at the island in the center, a laptop open in front of him, a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked up when I entered. "Good morning." I ignored the greeting. "I want to go home." "Not yet. It's been 4 days." "I'm aware." I stepped closer, my frustration spilling over. "You said I wasn't a prisoner." "You're not." "Then let me leave." He closed the laptop slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "If you walk out that door, Ella, you'll be dead within 48 hours. The certainty in his voice made my blood run cold. "You're lying." "I'm not." I stared at him, searching for cracks in his calm, for any sign that this was a game, but there was nothing. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. Dante stood, rounding the island until he was standing in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "Because," he said softly, "you walked past me in that dress." My breath caught, and I warned you what would happen. I didn't understand him. That was the problem. Dante Moretti moved through the house like a storm contained in human form, quiet, controlled, but always on the edge of something violent. He disappeared for hours at a time, leaving me alone with the stern-faced housekeeper who barely spoke. And when he returned, he was different, tense, distant, but he always checked on me. Every evening, without fail, he would appear in the doorway of the East Wing sitting room, where I'd taken to reading books from his library. He never stayed long, just long enough to ask if I needed anything, if I was comfortable, if I felt safe. I never answered the last question. By the end of the first week, I'd stopped asking to leave. Not because I'd accepted this twisted captivity, but because I'd started to see the truth in his warnings. The news had been reporting on a string of violent incidents across the city, kidnappings, murders, entire families disappearing overnight. The common thread, according to the vague reports, was their connection to organized crime families. Marco Santini's name had been mentioned once, briefly, before the story was scrubbed from every major outlet. I'd tried calling Lila twice from the phone Dante had left in my room. Both times, the calls went straight to voicemail. On the 8th day, I finally got a text back. "Lila, I'm okay. Marco says you're safe. Trust Dante. I'll explain everything when this is over. I love you. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. That night, I found Dante in his study. The door had been open, and I'd heard the sound of ice clinking in a glass, the rustle of papers. I stood in the doorway for a long moment before he noticed me. When he looked up, his expression was unreadable. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "I want answers." He leaned back in his chair, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "About what?" "About why I'm really here." Dante's jaw tightened. "I've already told you." "No," I interrupted, surprising myself with the force in my voice. "You gave me half-truths and warnings. You said this was about Marco, but then you said it wasn't. You said you were protecting me, but you won't tell me from who. I deserve to know the truth." For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then he stood, setting his glass down on the desk, and crossed the room until he was standing in front of me. "The truth," he said quietly, "is that the Santini family is at war with the Volkov Bratva. Marco's father made a deal that went bad, and now the Russians want blood. They've been taking anyone connected to the Santini's friends, business partners, distant relatives. Too. It doesn't matter. If they think you matter, you're a target." I swallowed hard. "And they think I matter because I was at that party." "Yes, but I don't. I'm nobody to Marco. I'm just Lila's friend." "They don't know that," Dante said. "And by the time they figure it out, you'd already be dead." The bluntness of his words hit me like a slap. "Then why didn't Marco protect me?" I asked. "Why you?" Dante's expression darkened. "Because Marco is reckless. He would have put you in a safe house surrounded by armed guards, and the Volkovs would have found you in a week. I don't make those mistakes. So you just took me." "Yes, without asking. Without giving me a choice. Would you have come willingly?" I glared at him. "No." Then I made the right call. I wanted to scream at him. To tell him that he had no right, that this was insane, that I wasn't some pawn in a game I didn't understand. But instead, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me since that first night in the car. "Why do you care if I live or die?" Dante went very still. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Then he stepped closer, so close I could feel the heat radiating off him. And when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because when you walked past me in that dress, Ella, I knew you were going to ruin me." My heart stopped. "What?" But he was already turning away, picking up his glass again, his walls slamming back into place. "Go to bed," he said, his tone cold. "We'll talk more tomorrow." I stood there for another moment, trembling, before I finally turned and left. The next morning, I woke to the sound of shouting. I bolted upright in bed, my heart racing, and pulled on the robe that had been left for me before stepping into the hallway. The shouting was coming from downstairs. I crept to the top of the staircase and peered down into the foyer. Dante stood near the front door, his posture rigid, his voice low and lethal as he spoke to a man I didn't recognize. The stranger was tall, broad, covered in tattoos that crawled up his neck, and he was yelling in a language I didn't understand. Russian, maybe. Dante said something sharp in return, and the man lunged forward. 3 other men appeared from the shadows, grabbing the stranger and dragging him back. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath coming in short gasps. Dante's eyes flicked up to the staircase. He saw me. For a split second, something crossed his face, anger, maybe, or fear, but then it was gone, and he barked an order to the men holding the stranger. They hauled him out the front door, and Dante followed. I didn't move until the house went silent again. An hour later, Dante found me in the library. I was curled up in one of the oversized chairs, a book open in my lap that I wasn't reading, my hands still shaking. He stood in the doorway, his shirt sleeves rolled up, a faint bruise blooming along his jaw. "Are you all right?" he asked. I looked up at him, my voice hollow. "Who was that?" "No one you need to worry about." "Dante." "He's gone, Ella. He won't come back." "But he found us." "He found me." Dante crossed the room and knelt in front of my chair, his eyes level with mine. "He didn't find you," he said firmly. "He found me, and I dealt with it." "How?" His jaw tightened. "You don't want to know." I stared at him, my stomach twisting. "This is your life," I whispered. Violence and threats and this. Yes, and you pulled me into it, to keep you out of something worse. I shook my head, tears pricking my eyes. I didn't ask for this. I know. His voice was softer now, and when he reached out to brush a strand of hair from my face, I didn't pull away. I know, he said again, and I'm sorry. I wanted to hate him, but when I looked into his eyes, dark, haunted, filled with something I couldn't name, I couldn't. What am I supposed to do? I asked. Dante's hand lingered near my cheek for a moment before he dropped it. Stay alive, he said, and trust me. The days blurred together after that. Dante became more present and somehow more distant. He worked from home now. His study door often open so he could hear if anything was wrong. Men came and went at all hours, their faces hard, their conversations conducted in low murmurs that cut off whenever I appeared. I wasn't supposed to see this world, but I was drowning in it. The house, for all its luxury, had started to feel smaller. The walls pressed in during the long afternoons when I had nothing to do but think, and the silence at night was suffocating. I'd tried to establish some kind of routine. Morning walks through the gardens, always accompanied by one of Dante's men, a quiet shadow who never spoke. Afternoons in the library, evenings pretending to watch television in the sitting room while Dante worked late into the night. But I felt like a ghost. On the 10th day, I broke. I found Dante in the kitchen just after midnight, leaning against the counter with a glass of whiskey in his hand, his tie loosened, exhaustion written across his face. He looked up when I entered, surprise flickering in his eyes. Can't sleep? He asked. I need to get out of here. He straightened slightly. Ella, not permanently, I said quickly. Just for a few hours. Please. I'm going insane in this house. Dante studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. It's not safe. You have a dozen armed men here. Bring them with us. I don't care. I just need to feel like a person again. Something in my voice must have reached him, because his shoulders sagged slightly, and he set down his glass. Where do you want to go? I hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know. Anywhere. A park. A coffee shop. Anywhere that isn't here. He was quiet for a long time. Then he sighed. Give me 10 minutes. 20 minutes later, we were in his car, a different one this time. Sleek and black, but somehow less intimidating than the one from that first night. Dante drove, his hands steady on the wheel, and I sat in the passenger seat, staring out at the city lights as they blurred past. He didn't tell me where we were going. I didn't ask. Eventually, we pulled into an empty parking lot overlooking the river. The water stretched out before us, dark and endless, reflecting the lights from the bridge in the distance. Dante turned off the engine but didn't move to get out. This is where I come, he said quietly, when I need to think. I looked over at him, surprised. I didn't think you needed to think, I said. You always seem so certain. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I'm good at pretending. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything unspoken, hanging between us. Why did you really bring me here? I asked finally. To the house, I mean. Not tonight. Dante's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I told you. You told me it was about protecting me from the Volkovs. But that man who came to the house, he wasn't there for Marco. He was there for you. Dante's jaw clenched. What do you want me to say, Ella? The truth. He turned to face me, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. The truth is that I made a mistake, he said. I saw you at that party, and I should have walked away. I should have let Marco handle it. But I didn't. And now you're here, and I can't. He stopped himself, shaking his head. You can't what? I pressed. I can't let you go. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and raw. Because it's not safe, I said, trying to understand. No. His voice dropped to something almost broken. Because I don't want to. My heart slammed against my ribs. Don't. You should hate me, he said, his eyes searching mine. You should be demanding I take you home, threatening to go to the police, fighting me every step of the way. But you're not. And I don't know if that's because you're scared, or because... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to, because I felt it too. This pull between us. This impossible, irrational thing that had been building since that first night, despite everything, despite the fear and the anger and the insanity of it all. "I don't hate you," I whispered. Dante closed his eyes, like my words physically hurt him. "You should, but I don't." When he opened his eyes again, the control he always wore like armor was gone. In its place was something raw and dangerous and achingly human. "Ella," he said, my name a warning and a plea all at once. I didn't move. Neither did he. The space between us felt electric, charged with everything we weren't saying. And then his phone buzzed. The spell shattered. Dante pulled his phone from his pocket, his expression hardening as he read the screen. "We need to go," he said. "What? Why?" "Now." The urgency in his voice sent ice through my veins. He started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the wheel hard enough that his knuckles went white. "Dante, what's happening?" "They found the house." My stomach dropped. "What?" "The Volkovs. They know where you are." "How?" "I don't know." His voice was clipped, controlled, but I could hear the fury beneath it. "But we're not going back there." "Then where are we going?" He didn't answer. We drove for over an hour, winding through back roads and empty highways, until we finally pulled up to a small cabin hidden deep in the woods. It was nothing like the mansion. Rustic, isolated, barely visible through the trees. Dante got out and came around to open my door, his eyes scanning the darkness around us. "Inside," he said. I followed him up the creaking porch steps and through the front door. The cabin was sparse but clean, one main room with a kitchenette, a sitting area, and a hallway that presumably led to a bedroom and bathroom. Dante locked the door behind us and pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "Are we safe here?" I asked, my voice small. "For now." "And after now?" He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "I don't know." The admission shook me more than anything else, he'd said. Dante Moretti, the man who had controlled every moment since I'd met him, who moved through danger like it was air, didn't know. "What do we do?" I whispered. He crossed the room and took my face in his hands, his touch startlingly gentle. "You stay with me," he said. "And you trust that I will do whatever it takes to keep you alive." Tears burned my eyes. What if that's not enough? His thumb brushed across my cheek, catching a tear before it fell. "Then I'll be trying." The certainty in his voice broke something inside me. I reached up and covered his hands with mine, holding them against my face. "I don't want you to die," I said. "Then we'll both have to survive." He leaned his forehead against mine, and we stood there in the dim light of the cabin, the world falling apart around us. And for just a moment, I let myself believe we could. The cabin had one bedroom, one bed. Dante didn't mention it, and neither did I. He spent the first hour making phone calls in hushed tones, pacing the length of the small living room while I sat curled up on the worn couch, my arms wrapped around my knees. I caught fragments of his conversations, names I didn't recognize, instructions delivered in that cold, commanding voice he used when he was in control. But his control was slipping. I could see it in the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept running his hand through his hair, the tightness around his eyes when he finally hung up and turned to face me. "They breached the house 20 minutes after we left," he said. My stomach turned. "Was anyone hurt?" "No. My men got out." He paused. "But they took everything. Security footage, files, anything that could lead them to us." "Will it?" "Not immediately. But we can't stay here long." I nodded, even though I didn't understand any of this. The strategies, the danger, the calculations. He was constantly running in his head. "How did they find us?" I asked. "The house, I mean. I thought you said it was safe." Dante's expression darkened. "Someone talked. Someone you trusted. Someone who's dead now." The flatness in his voice made me shiver. He crossed to the kitchenette and opened the small refrigerator, pulling out 2 bottles of water. He handed one to me before leaning against the counter, his eyes distant. "You should sleep," he said. "We're leaving before dawn." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they won't think to look." "And where's that?" He met my eyes. "I don't know yet." The honesty was more terrifying than any lie would have been. I tried to sleep. I went into the bedroom, changed into the spare clothes Dante had somehow produced from a duffel bag in the car, and lay down on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling. But every sound, the wind through the trees, the creak of the cabin settling, the low murmur of Dante's voice as he made another call set my nerves on edge. Around 2 a.m, I gave up. I found him in the living room, sitting on the floor with his back against the couch, a gun resting on the coffee table in front of him. He looked up when I appeared in the doorway. "Can't sleep?" he asked. I shook my head. He gestured to the space beside him, and after a moment's hesitation, I sat down. The floor was cold, but he was warm, and when my shoulder brushed against his, he didn't move away. "Tell me something," I said quietly. "Like what?" "Anything. Something that isn't about this." Dante was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I wanted to be an architect when I was a kid." I blinked, surprised. "Really?" My mother used to take me to museums, art galleries. She loved buildings, the history in them, the stories. She'd spend hours explaining why a doorway was shaped a certain way, or why the windows faced south. He smiled faintly. "I thought I'd design houses someday. Beautiful ones. Safe ones. What happened?" The smile faded. "My father happened. He needed an heir, not an architect." "And you just gave up?" "I didn't have a choice." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the shadow of the boy he must have been. The one who wanted to create instead of destroy. "That's sad," I said softly. "That's life. Not for everyone." He turned his head to look at me, and in the dim light, his eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. "What did you want to be?" he asked. "A teacher. Elementary school, maybe. I like kids. They're honest. They don't pretend to be something they're not." "Why didn't you?" I shrugged. "I don't know. Life got in the way. Bills, rent, fear of failing, the usual excuses." "That's sad," he echoed, a hint of irony in his voice. I smiled despite everything. "I guess we're both tragic then." "Tragic," he repeated, like he was testing the word. I think that's the kindest thing anyone's ever called me. I didn't know what to say to that, so instead, I let my head rest against his shoulder. He went very still. "Ella," he said quietly, "I'm just tired. You should sleep in the bed. I don't want to be alone." The confession slipped out before I could stop it, and I felt him tense beside me. "I can't." He stopped himself. "You don't know what you're asking." "I'm not asking for anything," I said. "I just don't want to be alone." For a long time, he didn't respond. Then, slowly, he shifted so that his arm came around my shoulders, pulling me closer against him. "Okay," he said. "Then you're not alone." I woke to the smell of coffee. I was still on the floor. My head pillowed on something soft, Dante's jacket, I realized. He was across the room, standing by the window with a mug in his hand, his posture tense as he stared out into the pre-dawn darkness. I sat up slowly, my body aching from sleeping on the hard floor. He turned at the sound, and something flickered across his face when he saw me. "Morning," he said. "Morning." He crossed the room and handed me his mug. "We need to leave in 20 minutes. I took a sip, black, strong, bitter, and nodded. "Where are we going?" "To someone who owes me a favor." "Is that safe?" "Nothing is safe right now, Ella." His voice was flat. "But it's the best option we have." I stood, handing the mug back to him. "Then I'll get ready." He caught my wrist gently before I could turn away. "Ella." I looked up at him. "I meant what I said last night," he said. "About keeping you alive. No matter what it takes." "I know. But if something happens, if we get separated, or if I tell you to run, you run. You don't look back. You don't try to help me. You just run. Don't. Promise me." His grip on my wrist tightened, not painfully, but urgently. I swallowed hard. "I promise." He held my gaze for another moment, searching for something, before he finally let go. "Good. Now get ready." The drive took 3 hours. Dante didn't tell me where we were going, and I didn't ask. I watched the landscape change outside the window, woods giving way to fields. Fields to suburbs, suburbs to city sprawl. We ended up in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. All narrow streets and old row houses, and Dante parked in front of one that looked just like all the others. "Stay in the car," he said. "What? No." "Ella." His voice was firm. "Stay. In. The. Car." He got out before I could argue, locking the doors behind him with the key fob. I watched him walk up to the front door and knock. A moment later, it opened, and a woman appeared middle-aged, tired-looking, her eyes widening when she saw Dante. They spoke for a few minutes. The woman kept shaking her head, gesturing emphatically. But Dante said something low and sharp, and she went still. Then she looked past him, straight at the car, straight at me. Her expression changed, softened. She nodded once, and Dante turned back toward the car. He opened my door. "Come on." "Who is she?" "Someone who's going to help us disappear." The woman's name was Maria. She didn't offer her last name, and I didn't ask. Inside, the house was small and cluttered but warm nothing, like Dante's cold mansion or the sparse cabin. There were photographs on the walls, mismatched furniture, the faint smell of something baking in the kitchen. It felt like a home. Maria led us into the living room and gestured for us to sit. "You're putting me in a bad position, Dante," she said, her accent thick Italian. "Maybe, or something close. You know this." "I know," Dante said. "And I wouldn't ask if I had another option." Her eyes flicked to me. "She's the one they're looking for?" "Yes." "And you're sure bringing her here is smart?" "No," Dante admitted. "But it's the best I can do right now." Maria sighed heavily and sat down across from us. "How long do you need?" "A week, maybe less." "A week?" She laughed bitterly. "You're out of your mind." "Maria, I have grandchildren, Dante. If the Volkovs find out I'm helping you, they won't. You don't know that." "I do." His voice hardened. "Because I won't let it happen." Maria stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head. "You always were too stubborn for your own good," she muttered. "Fine. 1 week. But after that, you're on your own." "Thank you." She waved him off and stood. "There's a room upstairs. Second door on the left. Stay out of sight. Don't answer the door. Don't make noise. And for God's sake, don't do anything stupid." Dante nodded, and Maria left the room without another word. I turned to him. "Who is she?" "My mother's sister." I blinked. "Your aunt?" "Not by blood, but close enough. And she just helps you, even though it's dangerous?" "She owes my mother a debt," Dante said quietly. "And I'm calling it in." There was something heavy in his voice, something that told me not to push further, so I didn't. The room upstairs was small but comfortable. A double bed, a dresser, a window overlooking the narrow street below. Dante dropped the duffel bag on the floor and moved to the window, checking the locks, the sight lines, the escape routes, always calculating. "Will we really be safe here?" I asked. "Safer than we were." "That's not an answer." He turned to face me. "It's the only one I have." I sank down onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion crashing over me in waves. "I don't know how much more of this I can take." Dante crossed the room and knelt in front of me, his hands resting lightly on my knees. "I know this is hell," he said. "I know you didn't sign up for any of it, but I need you to hold on a little longer. Can you do that?" I looked down at him, this dangerous, violent man who had torn my life apart and somehow become the only thing holding me together, and felt something crack inside my chest. "I don't know," I whispered. His hands tightened on my knees. "Then let me hold on for you." Tears burned my eyes. "Why are you doing this? Really? And don't tell me it's just about protection." Dante was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes searching mine. Then he said, "Because from the moment I saw you, I knew you didn't belong in my world, and that made me want to keep you in it anyway." My breath caught. "That doesn't make sense." "I know. It's selfish." "I know that too." "I should hate you," I said, echoing his words from the night by the river. "You should, but I don't." Something broke in his expression. He reached up and cupped my face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. And when he spoke, his voice was raw. "Tell me to stop, Ella. Tell me to let you go. Because if you don't, I won't be able to." I should have. I should have told him to leave, to take me somewhere safe and disappear from my life. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned forward and pressed my forehead to his. "I don't want you to stop," I whispered. Dante inhaled sharply, and then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and consuming and full of everything we'd been holding back since that first night. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, and I gripped the front of his shirt like I was afraid he'd vanish if I let go. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. "Ella," he said, my name a warning, but I didn't let him finish. I kissed him again, and this time, he didn't hold back. He stood, pulling me up with him, and his hands found my waist, my hips, sliding under the hem of my shirt. I gasped against his mouth, and he paused, his forehead resting against mine. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he said. I shook my head. "I don't." "You're sure?" I wasn't sure of anything anymore, but I was sure of this. "Yes." He kissed me again, slower this time, and guided me back toward the bed. Afterward, we lay tangled together in the sheets, the room dim and quiet around us. Dante's hand traced idle patterns on my shoulder, and I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Are you?" "No." The honesty surprised me. I tilted my head to look up at him. "Why not?" "Because now I have something to lose," he said. "And in my world, that's the most dangerous thing you can have." My throat tightened. "Then maybe we should leave your world behind." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" He looked down at me, and the sadness in his eyes made my chest ache. "Because my world doesn't let people go, Ella. It takes and takes until there's nothing left. Then we'll fight it." "We can't fight it." "We can try." Dante pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. "You still don't understand what you've gotten into," he said softly. "Then help me understand." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning." But I knew we wouldn't, because some truths were too dangerous to speak aloud. I woke alone. The bed beside me was cold, the imprint of Dante's body the only evidence he'd been there at all. I sat up slowly, pulling the sheet around me, and listened. The house was quiet, too quiet. I dressed quickly, my heart beginning to pound, and crept to the door. The hallway was empty, the morning light filtering through a window at the far end, casting long shadows on the worn carpet. "Dante?" I called softly. No answer. I made my way downstairs, every nerve on edge, and found Maria in the kitchen, kneading dough at the counter. She looked up when I entered, her expression unreadable. "Where is he?" I asked. "He left before dawn," she said. Didn't say where. Panic spiked through me. "He just left?" "He said he'd be back before nightfall." Maria dusted flour off her hands and fixed me with a hard look. "That boy has been carrying the weight of the world since he was 16. Don't add to it." I bristled. "I'm not trying to." "You're here, aren't you? That's enough." The sharpness in her voice stung, but I couldn't argue with it. I was a complication, a liability, and I was terrified that I was going to get him killed. The day dragged. I tried to help Maria with small tasks, folding laundry, washing dishes, but she shooed me away, insisting I stay out of sight. So I went back upstairs and sat by the window, watching the street below, waiting. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then began its descent. And still, Dante didn't return. By the time darkness fell, I was near panic. I went back downstairs to find Maria sitting in the living room, rosary beads in her hands, her lips moving in silent prayer. "He should be back by now," I said. She didn't open her eyes. "Then you should pray." "I don't know how." "Then learn." I sat down across from her, my hands clenched in my lap, and tried to keep the rising terror at bay. What if something had happened to him? What if the Volkovs had found him? What if... The front door opened. I was on my feet before I could think, rushing into the hallway. Dante stood in the doorway, blood streaked across his shirt, his knuckles split and raw. But he was alive. "Oh my God," I breathed. His eyes found mine, and something in them softened. "I'm fine," he said. "You're bleeding." "It's not mine." That should have terrified me, but all I felt was relief. I crossed the space between us and threw my arms around him, not caring about the blood or the danger or anything else. He stiffened for a moment, then wrapped his arms around me, holding me tight. My voice broke. "I thought you weren't coming back. I told you I would. You didn't tell me where you were going." "I know." He pulled back just enough to look down at me. "I'm sorry." Maria appeared in the doorway to the living room, her expression grim. "Did you take care of it?" she asked. Dante nodded. "It's done." "Good. Now get cleaned up before you bleed all over my floor." I followed him upstairs, ignoring his protests, and made him sit on the edge of the bathtub while I ran warm water and found a first aid kit under the sink. "You don't have to do this," he said. "Shut up." He almost smiled. I cleaned the blood from his hands carefully, my own hands shaking, and bandaged the worst of the cuts. He watched me the entire time, silent, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Where did you go?" I asked finally. "To send a message." "To who?" "To everyone." I looked up at him. "What kind of message?" His jaw tightened. "That you're off limits. That anyone who comes near you will answer to me." "Dante, I won't let them take you, Ella." His voice was low, fierce. "I don't care what it costs." Tears burned my eyes. "What if it costs your life?" "Then it costs my life. That's not fair." "Nothing about this is fair." I set down the bandages and cupped his face in my hands, forcing him to meet my eyes. "You can't die for me," I said. "I won't let you. You don't have a choice. Neither do you." We stared at each other, the weight of everything unspoken pressing down on us. Then Dante pulled me into his lap, his arms wrapping around me, and buried his face in my neck. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "Then don't let go." "I won't." And in that moment, I believed him. That night, we stayed awake long after Maria had gone to bed. We lay in the dark, our bodies pressed together, and for the first time, Dante talked. He told me about his father, a man who had built an empire on blood and fear, who had demanded absolute loyalty and given nothing in return. He told me about his mother, who had tried to shield him from that world and paid for it with her life. He told me about the first time he'd killed someone. He was 17. "I didn't want to," he said quietly. "But my father made it clear if I didn't, he'd see it as weakness. And weakness got you killed in his world." "So you did it?" "Yes. And you've been doing it ever since." "Yes." I traced my fingers along his jaw, feeling the tension there. "Do you regret it?" He was quiet for a long time. "I regret that I'm good at it," he said finally. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." I kissed him then, slow and soft, trying to pour everything I couldn't say into the touch. When I pulled back, he was looking at me like I was something precious, something fragile. "You make me want to be better," he said. "You are better." "No," he shook his head. "I'm not. But maybe with you, I could be." "Then stay with me," I whispered, "and we'll figure it out together." His hand found mine in the dark, our fingers tangling together. "Okay," he said. It was the first promise he'd made that didn't involve violence, and I held on to it like a lifeline. The attack came 3 days later. We'd started to believe, foolishly, that maybe Dante's message had worked, that maybe we'd bought ourselves time. We were wrong. It happened just after midnight. I woke to the sound of glass shattering downstairs, followed by shouting Maria's voice, high and terrified, and then Dante's, sharp and commanding. I bolted upright, my heart in my throat. Dante burst through the bedroom door, his gun already in his hand. "Get in the closet," he said. "Now." "What's happening?" "They found us. Move." He hauled me out of bed and shoved me toward the closet, pulling open the door and pushing me inside. "Stay here," he said. "Don't come out until I come get you. Do you understand?" "Don't. Do you understand?" I nodded, tears already streaming down my face. He kissed me once, hard and desperate, then closed the closet door. I heard his footsteps retreating, heard the sound of more shouting, and then gunfire. I clapped my hands over my mouth to stifle the scream that tried to escape. More gunfire, shouting in Russian, the sound of something heavy crashing to the floor, and then silence. I sat in the dark, shaking, counting the seconds, praying that Dante was alive. The closet door opened. I nearly sobbed with relief until I realized it wasn't Dante standing there. It was a man I'd never seen before. Tall, blonde, with cold blue eyes and a gun pointed directly at me. "Well," he said in accented English, "aren't you a pretty little problem?" He dragged me out of the closet by my arm, his grip bruising, and hauled me down the stairs. The living room was a war zone. Furniture overturned, bullet holes in the walls, Blood streaked across the floor. Maria sat huddled in the corner, her hands tied, her face pale. And Dante. Dante was on his knees in the center of the room, his hands behind his head, 3 men surrounding him with guns trained on his skull. His eyes found mine, and the rage that flickered across his face was terrifying. "Let her go, Alexei," he said, his voice deadly calm. The man holding me, Alexei, laughed. "I don't think so. She's the reason we're here after all. This is between us. Leave her out of it." "Oh, but she's already in it, Moretti. The moment you decided she was worth protecting, you made her a target." Alexei's grip on my arm tightened. "And now, you're going to watch what happens to people who get in my way. Touch her, and I'll kill every single person you've ever cared about," Dante said, his tone so cold it made my blood freeze. Alexei pressed the barrel of his gun to my temple. Big words from a man on his knees. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could see was Dante, his eyes locked on mine, and the helpless fury burning in them. "Please," I whispered. "Please don't." The gunshot was deafening, but it wasn't Alexei's gun that fired. It was Dante's. In one fluid motion, he'd twisted, disarmed one of the men behind him, and put a bullet through Alexei's shoulder. Alexei's grip on me loosened, and I dropped to the floor as chaos erupted around me. Gunfire, shouting, the sound of bodies hitting the ground. I crawled toward Maria, covering my head, trying to make myself as small as possible. And then, as quickly as it had started, it was over. I looked up. Dante was standing in the center of the room, blood splattered across his face, his chest heaving. The 3 men who had surrounded him were dead. Alexei was on the ground, clutching his shoulder, his face twisted in pain. Dante walked over to him slowly, his gun still raised. "I warned you," he said, and then he pulled the trigger. Afterward, in the terrible silence, Dante came to me. He knelt down beside where I sat, still pressed against the wall, and gently took my face in his hands. "Are you hurt?" he asked. I shook my head, unable to speak. "Look at me, Ella." I forced my eyes to meet his. "I need you to be okay," he said. "Can you do that?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure it was true. He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe, and I felt him shaking. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered. "I'm okay," I managed. "I'm okay." But we both knew that wasn't true. Maria refused to leave. "This is my home," she said firmly, even as Dante tried to convince her to go somewhere safe. "I'm not running." So Dante called in reinforcements, men I'd never seen before, who swept through the house, removing bodies, cleaning up blood, erasing all evidence of the attack. It was clinical, efficient, terrifying. By dawn, the house looked almost normal again, but nothing felt normal. I sat in the upstairs bedroom, staring at my hands, replaying the moment Alexei had put that gun to my head over and over. Dante found me there an hour later. He sat down beside me on the bed, his presence solid and grounding. "We're leaving tonight," he said. "It's not safe here anymore." "Where will we go?" "I have a place, somewhere no one knows about." "Will we ever stop running?" Dante took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I won't stop fighting. Not while you're still here." I looked at him, this man who had killed for me, who had bled for me, who had become my entire world in the span of a few impossible weeks, and made a choice. "Then I'm not going anywhere," I said. His eyes widened slightly. "Ella, I'm not running, Dante. If you're fighting, I'm staying. You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do." I squeezed his hand. "I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you." Something broke in his expression, and he pulled me into his arms, holding me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Maybe not," I said, "but you have me anyway." We left Maria's house under cover of darkness. Dante had arranged everything, new identities, a secure location, a plan that he refused to explain fully because, as he said, the less you know, the safer you are. I didn't argue. I'd seen enough violence, enough death, to understand that his world operated by rules I couldn't begin to comprehend. The drive took most of the night. We traveled in silence, Dante's hand resting on my thigh, his thumb tracing absent patterns that I'd come to recognize as his way of grounding himself. When we finally stopped, It was in front of a small cottage on the edge of a cliff, overlooking the ocean. "Where are we?" I asked. "Somewhere I bought years ago," Dante said. "Somewhere I thought I'd never need. It's beautiful. It's remote. No one knows about it except me." He turned to look at me. "We'll be safe here, at least for a while." The cottage was simple but comfortable, nothing like the mansion or even Maria's house. One bedroom, a small kitchen, a living area with windows that framed the endless expanse of ocean beyond. It felt like the edge of the world. Dante spent the first few hours securing the perimeter, setting up surveillance, doing all the things that came second nature to him. I watched him from the window, my heart aching. This was his life. Constant vigilance, constant fear, constant preparation for the next attack. And I'd chosen to share it with him. When he finally came back inside, I was waiting. "Talk to me," I said. He stopped, surprise flickering across his face. "About what?" "About what happens next. About how this ends." Dante was quiet for a long moment, then crossed the room to sit beside me on the couch. "It doesn't end, Ella," he said quietly. "Not the way you want it to." "Then how?" "Best case? We disappear. Change our names, move somewhere far away, and hope they eventually stop looking. And worst case?" His jaw tightened. "You know the worst case." I did, but I needed to hear him say it. "Tell me, anyway." Dante turned to face me, his eyes dark and haunted. "Worst case, they find us, and I die making sure you get away." "No." "Ella." I said no. I grabbed his hands, holding them tightly. "I didn't choose to stay with you just so you could die protecting me. I chose to stay because I want a life with you. A real life. Not this constant running and hiding. That's not possible." "Why not?" "Because men like me don't get happy endings." "Says who?" He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something break in his expression, like he wanted to believe me but couldn't let himself. "You still don't understand what I am," he said. "The things I've done." "I don't care." "You should." "But I don't." I moved closer, until our foreheads were touching. "I see you, Dante. Not the monster you think you are, not the killer. I see the man who protected me when he didn't have to, who held me when I was scared, who made me feel safe even when the world was falling apart." His hands came up to cup my face, and when he spoke, his voice was raw. "You're going to get hurt. Maybe. But I'd rather get hurt with you than be safe without you." He kissed me then, desperate and consuming, and I kissed him back with everything I had. Because I meant what I said. I chose him. And I wasn't letting go. The next few weeks were the strangest of my life. We fell into a routine of sorts, Dante, still checking the perimeter every morning, still fielding calls from people whose names I didn't know, still carrying that gun everywhere he went. But there were moments of peace too, mornings where we'd sit on the porch and watch the sun rise over the ocean, afternoons where he'd try to teach me how to cook his mother's recipes, laughing when I inevitably burned something, nights where we'd lie tangled together in bed, talking about the lives we might have had in another world. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And for the first time since this all began, I started to believe we might actually survive it. Then, on a Tuesday morning, everything changed. I woke to find Dante already dressed, his phone pressed to his ear, his expression darker than I'd seen in weeks. "What's wrong?" I asked. He held up a finger, finishing his conversation, then hung up and turned to me. "The Volkovs are calling for a truce," he said. I blinked. "What?" "Marco brokered a deal. They're willing to let this go, let you go in exchange for certain concessions." "What kind of concessions?" Dante's jaw tightened. "The kind that don't matter. What matters is that you'll be safe." Relief flooded through me, so intense it made me dizzy. That's good, right?" "Yes." But something in his voice made me pause. "Dante, what aren't you telling me?" He crossed the room and took my hands in his. "The truce comes with conditions. You can go back to your life, but I can't be part of it." My stomach dropped. "What?" "If they see us together, the deal is off. You'd be a target again. So you're saying..." "I'm saying you get to go home, Ella. You get your life back, your safety, everything. Without you. Without me." I pulled my hands free, shaking my head. No, I'm not doing that. "Ella, I told you I wasn't leaving. I told you I chose this. And now I'm giving you a way out, Dante said, his voice firm. Take it. What if I don't want to? That's not your choice to make. Anger flared hot in my chest. Like hell it isn't. Ella, listen to me. No, you listen. I stepped closer, my voice shaking. I didn't survive all of this just to walk away from you now. I don't care about the truce. I don't care about the conditions. I care about you. And I care about you staying alive, Dante said. Even if that means I can't be with you. Tears burned my eyes. That's not fair. I know. I hate you for this. I know that too. He pulled me into his arms, holding me while I cried. And I hated that even now, even when I wanted to scream at him, his touch still felt like home. I love you, I whispered against his chest. He went very still. Then, quietly, he said, I love you too. It was the first time either of us had said it. And it felt like goodbye. The arrangements were made within 48 hours. Marco himself came to the cottage flanked by guards, his expression unreadable, and explained the terms of the truce in detail. The Volkovs would consider the matter closed. I would be untouchable. But any contact between Dante and me would void the agreement. She goes back to her life, Marco said. You stay out of it. That's the deal. Dante agreed without hesitation. I wanted to scream. They gave me 2 days to say goodbye. 2 days that felt like both an eternity and no time at all. Dante and I spent them memorizing each other, the way he took his coffee, the sound of my laugh, the feel of his hands in my hair. We didn't talk about the future, because there wasn't one to talk about. We just existed. On the last night, we lay in bed together, neither of us sleeping. I'm going to find a way back to you, I said. Ella, I don't care how long it takes. I will find a way. Dante turned to face me, his eyes searching mine in the darkness. You deserve better than this, he said. Better than me. I don't want better. I want you. He kissed me then, slow and achingly tender, and I tried to memorize everything, the taste of him, the warmth of his skin, the way he held me like I was something precious. If things were different, he started. They're not, I interrupted. But maybe someday they will be. Maybe. Neither of us believed it. Marco came for me at dawn. I dressed slowly, putting off the inevitable, and when I finally walked out of the bedroom, Dante was waiting by the door. We didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. He pulled me into his arms one last time, and I held on to him like I could stop time if I just held tight enough. I love you, he whispered. I love you too. And then I had to let go. They took me back to the city, back to my apartment, which looked exactly as I'd left it weeks ago, untouched, frozen in time, like none of this had ever happened. But everything had changed. Lila came to see me the day after I returned. She cried when she hugged me, apologizing over and over for not warning me, for not protecting me, for dragging me into that world. I forgave her, because it wasn't her fault, and because, despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Weeks passed, then months. I went back to work, saw my friends, tried to rebuild the life I'd lost, but it felt hollow. Every morning, I woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. Every night, I lay awake wondering if he was safe, if he thought about me the way I thought about him. I told myself it would get easier. It didn't. 6 months after I left the cottage, I came home to find an envelope slipped under my door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with an address written in handwriting I recognized, and underneath it, 3 words, "When you're ready." My hands shook as I clutched the paper to my chest. He was giving me a choice. Stay in the safe, normal life I'd rebuilt, or walk back into the darkness with him. It took me 3 days to decide. 3 days of weighing the risks, of remembering the fear and the violence and the constant uncertainty. 3 days of remembering the way he looked at me, the way he held me, the way he made me feel alive. On the 4th day, I packed a bag. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just left. The address led me to a small house on the outskirts of the city, unassuming, quiet. I stood on the porch for a long time before I finally knocked. The door opened, and there he was. Dante stared at me, his expression cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that looked dangerously close to hope. "Ella," he breathed. "I told you," I said. my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. I told you I'd find a way back. You shouldn't be here. The truce. I don't care about the truce. They'll come after you. Then we'll deal with it. Together. Dante stepped forward, his hands cupping my face, his eyes searching mine. Are you sure? He asked. Once you walk through this door, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He kissed me then, and it felt like coming home, like everything I'd been missing for the past 6 months suddenly clicking back into place. When he finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. This won't be easy, he warned. I know. We'll have to be careful. Strategic. We'll always be looking over our shoulders. I know. And there's a chance. I know, I interrupted. But I'd rather have a dangerous life with you than a safe one without you. Dante smiled, a real smile. The kind I'd only seen a handful of times. Then come inside, he said. And I did. Epilogue 1 year later. We never did disappear completely. Dante still had ties to his world obligations he couldn't walk away from. People who depended on him. And the Volkovs, true to their nature, never fully let go of their grudge. But we learned to navigate it. We moved 3 times that first year, always staying one step ahead. We kept a low profile. We built a life in the spaces between the danger. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd dreamed of as a little girl, but it was ours. And some nights, when we'd sit on whatever porch or balcony we were currently calling home, watching the sunset, Dante would pull me close and whisper, I still can't believe you came back. And I'd smile and tell him the truth. I never really left, because the moment I'd walked past him in that red dress, the moment he'd warned me what would happen if I did it again, my fate had already been sealed. Not by force, not by fear, but by choice. And I'd choose him 1,000 times over, even knowing how it would end, even knowing we'd never be truly safe. Because love, the real kind, the dangerous kind, isn't about safety. It's about finding the one person worth burning the whole world down for, and then standing in the ashes together,